Bankruptcy, divorce laws, disability, probate, there are so many classes on the path to practicing law. Unfortunately, most schools fail to instruct you on the business of law. This is Solo De Facto, a show dedicated to discovering the success secrets that exist in the reality of running a solo practice. My goal is to find the one thing that separates each guest from the rest to give you practical solutions to create a thriving firm. Solo De Facto is sponsored by Back Office Betties, trusted virtual legal receptionist.
Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today with another episode of Solo De Facto. Today's guest is an avid University of Michigan football fan. He's a Google certified partner and president of AttorneySync. Gyi Tsakalakis, welcome to the show.
Kory, thanks so much for having me. So happy to be here. And nice job with my name.
I'm glad I got it right.
Nailed it.
All right. Let's get into it. So my first question for you today is, what's the one thing that you wish attorneys knew about running a successful law firm?
So big picture, it's all about client service, client experience. More specifically, one of the things that always comes up every time I talk to lawyers, I'm like, how are you handling your intake? Because lawyers love to spend tons of money on all sorts of marketing stuff. And then you call them or you interact with a chat bot on their site or you fill out a form and you're like, what? No response, goes to voicemail, busy signal, answer the phone unfriendly, chat bot leads to nowhere, form never gets a response. So you got to fix that stuff first before you actually spend a single dollar on marketing, in my humble opinion.
I wholeheartedly agree. That feels like just the quickest way to waste all of your money.
Oh,
if nobody's there to answer.
See it all the time. Missed phone call. We do call tracking reports. Missed phone. 10% of your phone calls last month were missed. You didn't even pick up the phone. And then lawyers will say things like, "Oh, well, people that really want to hire me, they'll leave a voice message." I'm like, what year are you living in, friend?
Mm-hmm. It's not true. And that's actually one of the things that we tell people is 80% of the people that call you are not going to leave a message. And if they're leaving a message, they're probably just trying to sell you and they're probably not even a lead. So you want to make sure your phone's answered.
Yeah, no, I'm surprised it's that high.
It is. Yeah, it's really high. And, but so what's the one thing that you think is, so like the first step to really improving that and making sure that they're not wasting their marketing dollars?
Yeah, I mean, it's really putting a focus on every experience that a potential client or client has with your firm. And so it's everything from what does someone see when they search your name online, when they arrive at your website, when they call you, when they receive an email from you. It's all that stuff is the stuff that goes to that experience. And, especially now with all the tools and technology and social networks and all this internet stuff, lawyers get overwhelmed. And if you haven't, if it's not something that you've been familiar with or like you don't really use personally, lawyers are surprised all the time to see what their web presence looks like. And again, we spend a lot of time and energy and money on trying to rank for like non-brand keywords. So, things like city plus practice area plus lawyer. But if you're just getting started, all this stuff's new to you, go do searches on your name and firm name, because no matter how someone gets your name, they're going to go to the internet and look you up, and what they find is going to play some role in their impression of you.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think this is such an overlooked thing? Do you think it's just that they're overwhelmed and don't know what to do, or what's your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a licensed lawyer, even though I'm not practicing. And I can tell you, when I went to law school, they don't teach marketing and business stuff in law school. I think some law schools are getting a little better, but seriously, the point is that, lawyers go to law school to learn. I mean, really, they learn history, right? They learn the history of the law. They don't learn a ton of practical business knowledge. And so unless they came from that background or they've been an entrepreneur in another context, why would we expect them to know anything about running a business, marketing, and especially when it comes to digital? So, and I think some of it for the lawyers that have been around the block, it's back to that mentality of people that really want to hire me. They're going to find me. They're going to contact me. They're going to hire me because I'm just a great lawyer. And I see this all the time. I talk to really experienced lawyers that are well known, and they'll say things like, "I don't understand why what's going on in my web presence isn't competitive with this new young lawyer down the street." And I'm like, because you've spent no time even thinking about this stuff, and this newer lawyer, like they're digital native, it's all they do. And so it just because you're a great lawyer doesn't mean that the world knows that you're a great lawyer, especially if it's not, if you're in a practice area that people are relying on the web or they're relying on social networks to find you. If they can't find information about you, if they can't find happy clients singing your praises, if they can't find videos of you talking about what you do, who you help, how you help people, why you help them, they're going to move on to the next one. There's, we're the highest lawyers per capita in the world here in the United States.
Absolutely. And people are doing almost all of their research online. So if you're not visible, how do they even know you exist? Going back to the topic of the actual intakes, what specific steps would you take if somebody had no intake process at all? They're starting from scratch. Their phone is rarely answered. What is something that you would advise them to do in that?
Yeah, this is one of those huge it depends, right? Because it goes into the economics of your firm. Are you a solo? Do you have support staff? But generally speaking, if you put the client or the potential client at the center, here's what we know. You've got to be able to answer the phone. In my view, it's got to be a human being. It's got to be in seconds. If a receptionist or somebody else is not the lawyer is going to do intake, and they're just going to take a message because the lawyer wants to do intake, you got to have a within 24-hour follow-up. You should have you should be capturing email through your intake to send them an automatic follow-up email, so that you're even just acknowledging that you've contacted them and set their expectations about when they can receive a call back. Because the real goal here from an experience standpoint, ideally you'll be able to answer their question, identify whether they're the right fit from you right away, but that's not always realistic. But the next best thing you can do is to set their expectations to stop their search, right? Because what we don't want them to do is to say, "Hey, I left a message. I don't know when I'm going to hear back, so I'm going to go back to Google and find the next lawyer on the list, or go to my referral source and get another referral," right? So stop that search. Look at the experience through their eyes. Think about it from how do you like it when you call the bank and they're like, press 1 for this and press 2 for this, and none of the options make sense, and then you're on hold and you're listening to music. Think about what that experience is like for your clients and avoid it at all costs, and put in those systems to be able to prevent that. And again, if this isn't your skill set, or if this is something that you don't have the time to do, you've got to work with a professional that can actually implement the system, whether it's a virtual receptionist. There's a variety of different ways to solve the problem, but everything has to be viewed from their perspective, not just what's most convenient for you.
I 100% agree, especially, being that Back Office Betties is a virtual receptionist service for this specific demographic that we're discussing. It's so important to get that phone answered and then have the expectation of when they can follow up, so that they're not just running down that list that they found on Google. Because even if you have great web presence, if you don't have somebody to be there and take their call, then they're going to go to the next person with good web presence. Right. And it's a long list. There's lots of them.
No, and that's one of the things that I really respect about Back Office Betties is the commitment to training, not just on we're going to respond, but we're going to respond well, right? The people are actually trained to help identify the issues that to qualify whether or not it's a client that the firm wants to take, or, just handling it in whatever way it is. But, as there's an art and science to actually working intake. Answering is like step 1. And so, again, even the law firms that answer the phone, if you just answer the phone, law firm, and we hear that all the time, it's like, well, that's not very friendly. Like, nobody wants to engage with that. Like, law firm. Do I even have the right law firm? And so again, I think that's another advantage, especially if you're a solo and you're just like, look, this is overwhelming. I can't answer the phone. I got to actually work cases here. You got to check out somebody, some folks that really know this stuff. And then again, you can do the math and see, and we see this all the time, but trained intake professionals, they actually increase conversion rate, right? So that's marketing gobbledygook for, they increase out of the number of people that call your firm, they increase the number of those people that are actually going to be qualified prospects and sign up as clients. And so there's a very compelling business case for working with professionals in the intake space.
Yeah, because once you start to convert more of those, then it's eventually just paying for itself for you to not even have to lift a finger. We actually did a webinar recently where I spoke on, we called somewhere over like 100 attorneys or law firms. And so many of them didn't answer. It was probably like 50% or somewhere around there that didn't even answer. The next majority did answer with law office. I'm like, well, which law office did we reach? Which one on our list are we talking to right now? And then some of them even answered the phone, hello. And we're like, did we reach an attorney?
Like going to their cell phone, you know?
Yeah. And so there's so many people that still aren't understanding the importance of that presence on the phone. And having that person that makes sure that they're gathering all of the information that you need to even follow up. If somebody's not getting their name or their phone number, how are you going to follow up?
And that's the worst. I love that one. We listen to a phone call and the conversation's going great. It's a qualified lead. It sounds like it's going to be a great client, and disconnected. And we had this great 30-minute conversation. And I never asked them for their callback number or their email. Oops.
Oh, yeah. That's like the biggest way you just have to kind of hope that they're going to call you back. But the chances of that happening are so slim. They're not going to. Well, I love that we're on the same page with this. It feels really, really cool to talk to someone else that really understands the intake.
I know the pain.
Okay. So once you have your intake completed, or the process is like, you've got somebody answering the phone, you've got the follow-up in place, you've got the questions that they're being asked every time to make sure you're gathering all that information. What would you say the first step of marketing at that point is, and getting people to start calling in to start the intake process?
So like it's how to get the phone ringing?
Mm-hmm. What would be that first step once your intake's ready?
Yeah. So, again, it's, you got to put together a plan based on your objectives. I think that's the biggest thing that's always missing when I hear marketing people talk is that, someone might say something like, well, start spending money on Google ads, or start, doing Facebook ads, or take out a billboard. And it's like, how can you possibly say that without having a conversation about what the firm's objectives are, right? Like, what are they trying to do in the next year, 6 months, 3 months from a business standpoint? Are they trying to hit a certain number of new clients? Do they have a target cost per acquisition of a client? Do they have a target cost per qualified lead? Without having those conversations and knowing those business metrics, like they're tied back to marketing metrics, I would say still you're not ready to spend money yet. But once, to be more direct, I don't mean to dodge your question. Once you get a plan and a budget in place and you've got your numbers, your numbers, you start executing the plan. And I'll tell you this, I tell lawyers all the time, I'm like, if you do nothing else, I'm actually going to speak to lawyers tomorrow. And I always tell them, if you do nothing else, go sign up for Google My Business, because for searches on your name and for searches on your firm name, no big secret, Google has the lion's share of search traffic. People are Google's a verb. And so how you appear in Google is going to make a big difference for those searches. And so, whether you're a very experienced lawyer and you have a totally referral-based practice, or you're a newer lawyer and you're just kind of getting your feet wet, people are going to go look for information about you online. They're going to go to Google. And Google My Business is commands the most search real estate for searches on your name and your firm name and variations thereof. It's going to deliver pictures and videos, client reviews, your phone number, your address, driving directions, frequently asked questions. I mean, it's the website before your website. And the great news is it's totally free. All you've got to do is go claim the profile and fill it out. They've got some quality guidelines. If you search for like Google My Business quality guidelines, you want to make sure you're following the guidelines. But That's really, to me, if you're going to be online at all, that's the place to go, because again, it's the lookup, right? It's people expect today to be able to find information about you. And, think about just like all the other things that go on in terms of your, your presence in real life. The internet, there's this digital presence. So if you make it really hard to find information about you, you can't find the phone number, you can't find the office location. That's like having, no signage on your building, and there's no directions. It's hard to get there. You get to the office, you can't tell which door to go into. Like, that's what we're talking about here. So to me, that's kind of the table stakes thing. If you do nothing else, check out Google My Business, totally free. States have different rules about, claiming profiles and testimonials. So, check with your state bar and what you can do there. But I've seen some really well done client video testimonials in Google My Business. And you think about this. So someone gets your name, they search for you online. First thing they see is this Google My Business thing. They click on it, and it's a video testimonial of a client who's talking about how you changed their life in one of the most difficult times of things that they've ever gone through. And think about how compelling, talk about marketing like that. That's what people want. They want to know that you care about your clients, that you're doing right by your clients, you're providing great service. And that's the thing that's crazy. It's totally free, and people are spending, $100,000 on their website, and all of this interaction, all of these impressions and expectations, they're happening before someone even clicks through to your website.
Yeah, that is amazing advice. Especially, I spend a lot of time looking up different attorneys that have raised their hand about our service, or looking at different websites just to see what's going on in that area. And the number of Google My Business profiles that pop up when I Google somebody is so low, and it makes it really difficult. And do I have the right firm name? Where are they located? What state is this firm even in? And that takes me to something on somebody's website, kind of a side note, little tangent. Your website needs to have your location. So being an attorney is such a local thing that when you're not telling people where you're at, you're losing them, because how are they going to know that you can even help them?
It's such a good point. And lawyers don't appreciate the importance of proximity to their clients. We talk about this with plaintiffs lawyers all the time. I was a former plaintiffs lawyer in a former life. And, plaintiffs lawyers, I say this, for the right case, I'll go anywhere in the state, right? I'll take a case anywhere in the state. If there's significant damages and it's a good case, I'll go anywhere in the state. But that's not how your client thinks at all. They care about, do they see a common local area code? Do they see that you're in a similar, location, whether it's zip code or city? And honestly, if you're in a major market, even sometimes it comes down to like blocks, right? It comes down to neighborhoods. And Google, they show different, you can walk down, like when I was in Chicago, I was walking down the street, they'll show different results block to block. And so to your point, proximity matters. Google actually has a bunch of data on this, but I'm going to get the data wrong, of course. But if you search for like proximity to ads, but it makes a huge difference in your ability to convert a client based on where you're targeting. And so we see this all the time, where if you go out a distance from a law firm, so say you're running ads throughout the state, conversion rates for ads, for digital ads, go down as you move away from the firm a lot of times, for this very reason, because proximity matters to local clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as we get more virtual, and the attorneys are able to take it, it's probably a little bit less, or on the way down from importance. But I would much rather drive 5 minutes to an office than 30 or an hour to go. I live right outside of Austin. If something's in my little suburb versus driving into Austin, I'm not going to go to Austin. Well, I'm going to pick the one in my neighborhood.
Yeah, you raise another really great point, which is that virtual and being able to deliver services virtually and digitally can be a huge competitive advantage for that very reason, where it's like, if you've got e-signatures set up, you can have retainers signed, you can conduct Zoom conferences with clients, you're delivering content to them digitally, versus having, no one wants to get in their car and drive over to the law firm and put on their mask and wash their hands and go through all the rigmarole. And people are busy. And so you can also deliver services asynchronously, right? So a lot of clients, they're not going to be able to they got to work during the day. Right. And so they want to be able to review documents and have calls, during off work hours. And, even it's also efficient for you, the lawyer, because now you can deliver that. You don't have to get in the car and go to the clients or go to, a third party location or a coffee shop or whatever it is. So that's a huge competitive advantage. And that should also be highlighted in all of your marketing materials. So get back to Google My Business. Google My Business, they added the ability to acknowledge that you take online appointments. And so if you do that and your competition doesn't, think about it when someone's looking for a lawyer. That's a great way to distinguish yourself to win that call.
Absolutely. I mean, if you can just go on your lunch break and meet with your attorney at your computer, like, why wouldn't you hire them? I actually, the way that now they've even allowed like court appointments virtually. My son was attacked by a dog a couple of years ago. And so I've been in a settlement with an insurance company, and it's been, a long drawn out process. We're finally almost to our last hearing, but it's all happening virtually. And the attack happened in Arizona. I live in Texas. The fact that it can happen between states and I don't have to be traveling to get this handled and to work with my attorney that is fighting for my son's settlement, it's a game changer. Because like I probably would have given up and none of us would have gotten money,
Thank you for sharing that story. I know folks that are listening to this, like that's going to resonate. I mean, you have firsthand experience with this, and it's everything. I mean, you can't, in some way, I know there are clients that they just give up on the claim because they're like, this is just too hard. I can't make the trip. I can't do the depositions. I can't do all the work that it takes to pursue the claim. And like, there's access to justice issues there, right? Like it's just not, we should be reducing the barriers and making it less friction to be able to pursue justice, and technology can help a lot.
Yeah, I 100% agree, because that brings up another point for me, is that even outside of that, the process felt so overwhelming and frustrating that I did want to give up. It's been, 2.5 years since this happened and we're not done yet. That makes me want to give up. So if I'm having somebody who's working with me and giving me good customer service and giving me expectations of what to expect, I'm not going to give up. I'm going to keep going because there's a bright side and there's, light at the end of the tunnel. We're almost done. Like I literally have 1 week until my appointment for our last hearing and I'm just so ready. But I could see that in a lot of cases, people would just feel super frustrated with the process if they're not getting the communication and the engagement that they need, which goes back to the people on the phones and the people doing the follow-up and all of that. So,
and that's the thing. Technology gives you so many ways to be able to deliver those updates now. We talk to lawyers all the time, and it's like, you can just send a text with a link that's a video that talks about, hey, you're in the discovery stage. Here's what you can expect. Here are some of the dates on your court order. Here's, you can do deposition coaching through those videos. Like there's just so much. And then, think about it, as you mentioned, like from the client side, now you're informed, you can see there's light at the end of the tunnel. You feel much more confident that your matters being handled by somebody who's competent because they're keeping you up to date about what's going on. And on the lawyer's side, it's much more efficient than, having to pick up the phone and making the call. And then you're not available because you're working. And so they've got to leave a voice message, call me back. You can deliver a lot of that service asynchronously through the phone, through a text message, through a video. And you talk again, back to the beginning, what this is all about. It's all about that client experience and just what a much more remarkable experience it is to receive, be working with a lawyer and receive legal services to be able to do it that way.
Absolutely. All right. I'm going to move on now a little bit to what is the most exciting thing that's happening in your business right now or coming up in the near future?
Gosh, with our business, like it's just constantly changing, which is why it's one of the reasons I went into this business. There's a lot of big advancements. I mean, you think about it, even though it feels like some of these platforms and tools have been around. Maybe I'm going to date myself here, but they've been around forever. But the truth is, it's really the tip of the iceberg. Obviously, I think there's some interesting things kind of going on with non-lawyer owned law firms and what the impact of some of these like illegal Zoom and some of these other players entering that space. But it's exciting times. I think we're going to see some consolidation in legal. But the good news is the thing that's really the silver lining of this whole pandemic thing from our perspective has been that lawyers that have been very resistant to the internet and digital and communication technologies have kind of been forced to be able to adopt these things, or else in many instances they were in places where they couldn't be open at all. And so it was like, you either figure this out or you die. And that's been very positive. So I think that the agenda of the drum we've been banging for so long to put clients first, to give them different ways to communicate, to make things easier, to reduce the friction. Like we've taken some light year steps forward in the last 2 years. And so that's really exciting. I think it's better for legal services consumers. I think it's better for work-life balance for lawyers. And again, I think there's just so much opportunity to improve the way that you practice law if you embrace some of these technologies.
Awesome. So on that note, is there any super cool technology that you think is the best thing that you just need everyone to know about?
So technically, I guess I would go back to Google My Business, even though it's like, is it technology maybe? But the other one too, that I don't know how cool it is, but it's been a game changer for me personally, as well as a lot of firms we work with, is some kind of calendaring appointment setting tool. So I'm a big Calendly fan, but to be able to go to someone and say, hey, here's my calendar, here's my availability, where does it match up with yours? Pick a time. And Calendly's got all these different workflows, and it also triggers like, hey, reminder, if you give people the option to enter their cell phone number, you can fire off a reminder text. Hey, we're meeting in 30 minutes. You get better show rates. It's a better experience for everybody. You're not going back and forth in email. Thinking about in the context of client service, clients can schedule time with you. They don't have to like call you and leave you a message and then wait for you to get back to them or send you an email. So I think that's one that I would focus on. Not that like quote unquote cool, but really can be impactful in your business.
Absolutely. Because getting I've been actually dealing with this recently of trying to schedule an appointment between 3 people and fighting that calendar. And it's like, okay, if we could just all share a calendar right now and somebody could click a link, this would be way easier to schedule.
Absolutely.
Are there any cool conferences or associations we should know about, or anything that you really like to hang out at?
Sure. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the American Bar Association's tech show, since I'm on the planning board. So hope to see folks that we're doing a hybrid conference as of now. It's a very dynamic environment, but that's been another interesting thing that's kind of happened over the last 2 years is that one of the silver linings that's come out of the pandemic is a lot of these shows that have traditionally been in person only are now offering hybrid options, which is great for folks that, maybe they can't afford the trip, or, their work schedule doesn't allow them to make the trip. And so now you can have access to these experts and content, again, from the comfort of your own home on your own terms. So tech show. And then I would also encourage folks, I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to attend, but Clio's Cloud Conference, which is coming up at the end of this month, I believe, is just fantastic. And talk about, Jack Newton, the founder of Clio, he's huge on the client-centered, he wrote a book about it, client-centered law practice. So if you're interested in things like understanding how to implement tools and technology to put clients at the center, tech show, Clio Cloud Conference, those would be the two that would be the top of my list.
Awesome. We're actually going to be at Clio next year, not this year, but next year.
Awesome.
And I really love the ability to sit at home and attend these things that I never would have been able to before. I'm a mom, my arranging for someone to watch my kids for me to travel is not the easiest thing.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And I tell people all the time too, is that with these hybrid and virtual events, the key is meet people, right? Get in the chat, make some connections, connect on LinkedIn, because you take that one show experience. Look, the content's great, right? You listen to you learn something new. You can apply in your business, or your firm, or in your personal life. Maybe you get energized by a keynote speaker. But the real value is to connect with other people And, you can still do that virtually. So get in the chat, most of the conferences will provide an attendee list, but if you're having conversations in the chat or if they create virtual spaces, so much value there from a networking perspective. And again, to your point, now you can access that from the comfort of your own home.
Totally. And if you're an introvert, it's a whole lot easier to chat someone than to try and bring up a conversation in real life.
Absolutely. Yep.
You're hitting on a lot of things that hit for me personally. All right. So now I kind of want to find out, how did you get here? I would love to hear about your life as far back as you want to take me. But I'm curious how you ended up here and with AttorneySync.
So January 19th, 1979. No, we won't go back that far. So I grew up outside of Detroit. Had a great childhood. And it actually started off as a computer science major. I was always kind of like tinkering with computers and stuff, and thought I wanted to go that direction. But this was like, late 90s. And so computer science back then wasn't as exciting as it is today. And so I was like, do I really want to have a career sitting in a dark room writing code? And that's kind of like, I don't know, not really. And so I found the joys of philosophy. And so I was a philosophy major. Sadly, I loved my philosophy major. I wouldn't trade it for anything. But sadly, unless you're going to go into academia, not a huge market for philosophers these days. And so went to law school, kind of was really enamored with the practice of law. I think I watched too much Law and Order, romanticized it too much. But had a very, very, it's hard to even call it a career. I only practiced for, maybe like 2 years. And part of that early on in that career, other lawyers out would be like, hey, about technology and websites and stuff, like, what should we be doing? And so I kind of went out and saw what was available. And I was just, frankly, I was like, gosh, there's not that great of options. And there's a lot of opacity and people weren't really being transparent with what was going on. And so I was like, we could probably do this better. And so I partnered up with a friend of mine from undergrad who had experience at another digital company and had a background in sales. And so that was really the genesis of AttorneySync. Was that, hey, I feel like we could serve lawyers with more transparent and accountable kind of marketing services. And we really started out more of like a traditional lead gen company and pivoted because of some of the regulatory environment at the time. But that's really the story. It was really born out of, me and my partner had always kind of had a technology bend. But I'm a self-taught SEO, and I think we both had the entrepreneur itch, and so took the leap and never looked back. And we've been in business since 2008, and I actually founded a second agency in 2013. It's not in legal at all, but I think it's fascinating. I think it's really interesting the impact that web presence has on everybody's business. Really, I always tell people, I'm like, people say, oh, I'm not in the digital marketing business. And I'm like, yeah, everybody is. If people look for information about you online, you're in the digital marketing business, like it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so fascinating when people find marketing, because I found it on accident and I never really knew what I was going to do with my life until I became a marketer. I'm like, wow, this is so exciting to figure out how to do all these things.
Yeah,
So
no, it's
awesome.
fun. It's psychology, it's strategy. If you throw the technology aspect into it, then it gets super dynamic. It's always changing. There's always new things to learn. And yeah, I think that story resonates with me as well, because I think a lot of people do kind of stumble into it, especially digital. And I think now, back in the 90s, there wasn't even a degree for digital marketing. And now I think there's a lot more of that curriculum. So I think some people do pursue careers in it now, but yeah, I do think a lot of people still happen to stumble into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back in time, if you could meet yourself when you first graduated, I'm going to say when you first graduated law school, what advice would you give yourself?
It's all about the people. Lawyers, everybody focus, and I'm going to say this, and then and you're going to get, people are going to message you and be like, whoever that guy was has no idea what he's talking about. But lawyers focus on competency. They want to, be the best lawyer, know the law, practice, try it. If you're a trial lawyer, trial skills. And don't get me wrong, that stuff matters. But the issue is there's a bunch of issues there, but one is that that's kind of table stakes. Like you have to be a good lawyer in order to be able to properly represent clients and to have happy clients sing your praises. But every lawyer is thinking the same thing. And there's another thing that lawyers don't realize is that, guess what? Your clients have no idea how good of a lawyer you are. There's no, Avvo tries to do their ratings and Martindale has their ratings and there's, Google reviews and that kind of stuff. But if you think about it, when you're looking for a lawyer, you can't tell a great lawyer from a not great lawyer. And so the point there is that it's all about the people skills. It's about leading with empathy and having gratitude and listening to clients. And the same thing goes for when you're, if you're in a position, if you're a managing partner, head of a firm, to the people you hire and you have on your team or the people you partner with, like that stuff matters so much more than how good you are at opening arguments or taking depositions. And so that's the thing if you're a new lawyer listening to this, or if you're an experienced lawyer listening to this and you're kind of struggling, I focus on the people side of things. And that's the thing I would tell myself as well, because trust me, I've made a ton of mistakes in the area of people and not prioritizing them, not prioritizing culture. But business is all about people. It's people. And unless you're, I don't know, unless you like write code for like an artificial intelligence, maybe there's no people there, but otherwise it's all people. Everything's people.
Yeah. And when somebody is referring you as a great lawyer, they're not referring on your experience or your knowledge. They're referring based on how you treated them and how they felt while you're taking care of them and helping them. They truly don't understand everything that you've learned or figured out in law school or your stats or your win rates or anything. They care how you treated them.
Right. And a lot of times in most legal contexts, clients, they don't even know what a good outcome is, right? Like if you get arrested, you're like, you think a good outcome is just freedom, right? Get acquitted, right? But you don't know, because you might be in a situation where it's like, if they plea you down, that was actually a great outcome. But those expectation sets and having those conversations and getting to know your client, that's the only way to navigate that. Because otherwise they just don't know. Same thing on plaintiff side. It's like, yeah, give me $1 million, right? Well, your claim's not worth $1 million. So they don't know what a good outcome is, but they know what to your point, they know what it's like to be treated with respect. They know what it's like to be followed up with, kept in the loop, responded to, get their questions answered. Like people know how that feels. And if you do that stuff, people will sing your praises and they'll refer you more business.
Yeah. I was on a website recently for a law firm that one of their like highlighted good outcomes was that they got somebody, I think it was basically house arrest. I can't remember how they worded it, but I was like, that doesn't sound that good to me as somebody looking at an attorney's website. I wouldn't necessarily highlight that they still got in trouble, And so to me, it's funny because that is a good outcome, but not in the eye of, it's not necessarily a good outcome in the eye of somebody looking for their attorney. And so that's not going to be the thing that's going to sell them on you, because they're going to be trying to avoid that. They want to be in no trouble.
No, that's right. And that's why from a marketing standpoint, like the expectation set that you do with outcomes at the beginning is so important. Plaintiffs lawyers love to put these huge verdicts on their site, and then clients call up and they're like, hey, I saw you got $1 million verdict, so give me my $1 million. And they're like, your case is worth like 10 grand. And they're like, what? Oh, and you know, what's funny? It's funny and sad, but you see this play out in negative reviews on Google My Business, where people will say, they didn't take my case. They didn't think I had a case and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, see, that's where the service part matters so much, because now everybody that looks that lawyer up is going to say, oh, this lawyer doesn't care and they don't treat people well and blah, blah, blah. And so anyway, that's the thing that the internet has done. It's really democratized information in that respect. And so got to treat people right. And, look, even as hard as you work to do that, some people they're going to leave you a negative review, and that's just part of the game too. But what you find is that if you spend time investing in the experience, you're mindful of your communications and intake, those problems are much smaller, and you get a lot more people singing your praises. And you see this too. The lawyer wasn't the right lawyer for me, but they took the time to listen to me, and they referred me to another lawyer who really helped me out. You see that in reviews too.
Yeah. Because if you can't help somebody, but you can show them that you care, that's worth the world.
Exactly.
Well, this has been really great. I've loved this conversation. I'm curious, where can people find you?
So I waste a lot of time on Twitter. It's really easy, just at Gyi Tsakalakis. Put it in the show notes. Usually if you just start typing Gyi, it comes up. You can go to AttorneySync.com, AttorneySync.com, and feel free to contact me there. I will be at the ABA Tech Show if you want to see me in real life, and the various other places around the web. Thank you so much for having me. I really did enjoy this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And thank you to everyone listening. If you learned something or you really enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone else who might get some value from it. That's it. And I'll catch you next time.
Thank you for joining us for today's show. For more information, visit our site at solodefacto.com. And remember, smash that like and subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Solo De Facto is sponsored by Back Office Betties, trusted virtual legal receptionist, helping you grow your firm one call, one chat, one new client at a time. To discover how they can help you grow your firm, head on over to backofficebetties.com and mention the Solo De Facto show for an exclusive listener offer.